get our guest on the show, Dan Gainor.
It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA. Here's Kevin Torres.
Okay, Dan, I'm going to let you tell the good people what organization you're with. Not that I don't know, but it sounds so much more official coming out of your mouth.
Well, that's okay. I'm Vice President of Business and Culture from the Media Research Center. That's Brent Bozel's group for people who recognize him from his infinite number of TV appearances.
Yeah, he does get... Well, he doesn't get on all of them. He just gets on Fox, doesn't he?
Well, I think in the years, Brent's probably been on all of them. I've been on almost all of them.
Have you really?
If I've been on almost all of them, I bet all the money in my wallet that he's been on all the majors.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. Our poor author down in New York, Ed Klein, he's been on WLEA, a bunch of radio stations across the country, but nothing on the major media, because he wrote a book exposing the two icons of the left wing. It's right. Mm-hmm. Anything that makes Obama look bad is ignored. They weren't that nice to Bill Clinton, so something's changed in 20 years, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, they liked Bill Clinton when he was useful, but now I think one of the things that bothers them is that Bill Clinton is somewhat of a drag on the Hillary Clinton presidency. Unfortunately, reporters and editors far too often support the left, and so they were happy to support Bill Clinton when he was reliable. But now, and I mean, there was a report that just came out recently in, I think, the New York Post about another book that reports Bill Clinton's got a long-standing affair where as soon as Hillary leaves the house, a blonde, quote, bombshell comes into the house and joins him. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what's been reported. And I think a lot of the left really resents the power that Bill Clinton has to make or possibly break the Hillary candidacy.
Well, we're going to talk more about that this week, I think, with Ed Klein. Have you read his book, by the way, Dan?
Only a little bit of it.
Oh.
I've just been too busy.
This will hardly spoil Ed Klein's book, Blood Feud. It will not spoil it for you, but it will give you pause. At the very end of the book, Hillary and Bill are chatting, and Bill's health is in decline. Ed Klein establishes that rather early on, but then he goes into greater details about the fact that Bill's really on limited time here. He's on borrowed time. And he says to Hillary, if I don't make it, if I don't make it to the restoration of the Clinton White House in 2016, I have planned, and I'm sure he has, a great state funeral. And Hillary, you've got to wear black, and you've got to keep wearing black to remind them that your husband died. And the state funeral will be A number 1 first cabin, okay? And Hillary, that'll be worth 2 million votes. I thought to myself, you poor guy. I mean, Dan, they go through life without ever getting a clue. I wouldn't change places with those people in a million years.
Well, the only other people would ever sound like, they sound like low-rent Kennedys. They want to be the Kennedy dynasty. They want, not just that, both husband and wife to run for office, but they want, their daughter to run for office. Mm-hmm. They want to be the new Kennedys, but they lack the panache, and unless they do a bunch more book deals and speaking engagements, they lack the cash.
Yeah, they don't have the money the Kennedys had. Yeah. Well, now something recently happened to one of the finest men ever to work in the NFL, Tony Dungy. Do you know about that, Dan?
Yeah, and what happened was he was interviewed by one of the Tampa papers, and he was asked his opinion of Michael Sam making it into the NFL.
And who's Michael Sam?
Michael Sam was the first openly gay college player drafted by the NFL.
All right.
And he was drafted by the Rams in the 7th round with only a few picks left. The owner of the Rams is a member of the NFL competition committee, so he was very obvious in his interview with USA Today after that he felt that it was for the good of the sport to draft him. Now, Michael Sam had good college stats. I mean, he was a prominent player of the year. The problem he has in the NFL is he's what is called, from sports perspective, a tweener. He doesn't have the skills and strength and size to be a defensive lineman, and he doesn't have the speed to be a linebacker. So that puts him in a bad place. So he had a very bad combine day when they were testing the strength and performance of the players. So they're interviewing Dungy, and Dungy said he wouldn't have drafted Sam, that there would be other things would happen. And he left and descended on him. Here he is, this prominent African-American coach, a huge impact in the NFL, both by his coaching and, honestly, by the fact that, he was this prominent black coach. And so they come out and they, of course, describe him as homophobe and, worse. I mean, they just want to destroy the man, and all because he believes in traditional marriage. And I mean, so he's a groundbreaker, and that seemed to be one of the things that the left, whether it's USA Today or Deadspin or any of these sports sites, because here's a quote from one. But this is disappointing stance from the first African American coach to win a Super Bowl, who dealt with racially based backlash for he and his family at times. Dungy literally wrote the foreword of the book pushing for equal coaching opportunity in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And, but they referred to him as insufferable, and I won't use the noun that they use because it is a 4-letter word, and they called him, an example of religion-based homophobia.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are two very bad things to have anything religion-based. I think the word pathetic was also used about a guy that was highly successful in his field and well regarded by his players as being a real gentleman, someone who would really help you out. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, and I mean, and very openly Christian.
Yeah. Well, you can't do that either, pal.
He's a Bible verse in his Twitter bio, and he supported the efforts when Indiana wanted to define marriages between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. And so those are all things. I mean, the left believes completely in free speech, as long as you happen to say something they agree with. Mm-hmm. If you don't say anything they agree with, they want to silence you. And I mean, look, here is a guy that they would ordinarily be proud of. Look, here's a person of color who's risen to the highest level of profession. Oh my gosh, we're so proud of him. Look at this great example. Oh my gosh, wait, he didn't agree with us? Oh, he must be destroyed.
I'm talking with Dan Gainor. He's been on our show a lot. Glad to hear that he's finally used our show as a springboard into the networks. We'll be back in just a moment. Dan Gainor, Media Research Center. When did the media get so far left, Dan?
Well, see, I don't think it's so much when did the media get so far left. I think when did we notice that they were? Mm. I think that's, I mean, you go back into the 1960s, and, you're looking at Walter Cronkite, Helen Thomas, two of the leading lights of journalism, and you can go on from that, just go down the line of big-name journalists, and they were all left-wing. The reason why they covered the Vietnam War the way they did is because they were left-wing. But that was the first time in this country's history where we really realized it. And you go back to World War II, that would have come out then, but it was a world war, and the country kept a good handle on media coverage, and also, for the left's perspective, even Hollywood left, we were on the same side of the communists. We were on the same side of the Soviet Union, and so they wanted us to win, and they could be unabashedly patriotic that way. But that all went out the window once the threats to communism, and once we were seen as picking on a little guy. That's it. They went after us. And you read up on how left wing Helen Thomas and Walter Cronkite and others were. It's laughable that we didn't know. But the reason why we didn't know is they were the only news.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Now with Fox, a lot of people don't like Fox, but with Fox, frankly, you get more news. You do get more news, and from a slightly different perspective, and maybe that bothers you.
The internet. I mean,
yeah.
The history of this country, you'd have multiple daily papers in each city. And so you have a union paper, you'd have a business paper, you'd have a legal paper, you'd have a political paper, Republican, Democratic paper, and they'd all have their own spin. But over time, it became pretty much a one or two paper monopoly of a city. And they didn't have much difference. And if the papers didn't consider something important, let's say you're a new candidate, and they didn't think you stood a chance to win, you wouldn't get any coverage. That's just it. Oh, well, we don't think you're important. And it's still that way in some cities, but now you have the internet, you have bloggers, you have websites, at a national level, you have all sorts of stuff like CNS News, which is with us, or The Blaze, or Fox, or Breitbart, or whatever. There are a lot of opportunities to at least get some other news out there, and that's the key. Some. There's a lot that doesn't get out. I mean, the infrastructure of journalism is still designed to produce left-wing information all the way up the channel.
Or cover up what's happening, yeah. Yeah, I find it amazing that so many people are, of course, not that they're ticked off at the IRS. Name me anyone that loves the IRS. I'm sure there are good, honest, decent Americans working for the IRS, but as an institution, how can you like someone that takes your money and scares the daylights out of you in the meantime? But I'm still amazed that enough people in this country, because the mainstream media ignored it, that more people than not are aware of what Lois Lerner did. We'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She's innocent till proven guilty, but does anyone really think she's not going to be guilty someday when all the facts get out? Yet, the majority of the people overwhelmingly want the IRS brought down because of the Lois Lerner thing. And the same with Benghazi, even though the mainstream media has covered it up. It can't all be Fox because they don't have any terrific viewership compared to the other ones. What, you think it's the internet that's doing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, and see, things like Facebook. Our organization has, I think it's 5 million different fans on Facebook. Each fan has a couple hundred followers. Some of them, they're friends, they're relatives. Not all of them are conservative. Many of them are not. I mean, going by my own Facebook group, many of the people I know are moderate or liberal. And so when you post things on Facebook, they all see that and go, oh, wait a second, that doesn't sound good, having the IRS investigate political opponents. That's the same thing happens in a third world country. And then so some of the stuff gets out in a way that has never gotten out before. There's more media now, but there is more democratization of media. The major players still are hugely dominant, and it's hard to swim upstream and get them to cover something, but you can chip away. Our own office, I take no credit for this. Tim Graham, who I work with, wrote about how the Washington Post did a story on one of the anti-Israel protests. And it turns out they sent one of the reporters and an intern. Well, the intern spends a good chunk of her time bashing Israel, very blatantly on her Twitter feed. And, so Tim called him on it, and they even wrote an apology.
Huh.
Sorry, we should not have done this. If we had known what she wrote, yes, we all know they knew, but at least they still had to admit that they were wrong.
Yeah.
Only in major media do clips or writing samples from from left-wing outlets benefit you. I mean, if you write for Breitbart coming out of college as a journalism student, you're not getting the internship at the Washington Post and New York Times. It's just not. But if you write for MoveOn.org or some Counterpunch or some left-wing publication bashing Israel and promoting Palestinian terrorists, the Washington Post or New York Times are more than happy to find you a job.
Well, our time is gone. Dan Gainor, we've had him on the show several times. Thanks, Dan Gainor. We'll have you back again soon because you're always interesting, pal. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right. Dan is with Media Research Center. I don't know what the site is, but just plug in Media Research Center. They have a lot of interesting stuff up there. And it kind of gives you another view from MoveOn.org, which is George Soros, who is a major player in our country, and yet probably less than 3 or 4% have ever heard of the guy. Okay, more news and information coming up next on AM 1480 WLEA.